My name is Rachel Morgan. I'm 23 years old, and what I'm about to share with you is not just a random, scary tale you hear on the internet. It is my real story. One that tore my life apart and changed me forever. I used to think family meant safety. That even in a broken home, even with remarriages and step-siblings, there would still be some kind of love or at the very least tolerance. But I was wrong, so horribly wrong, because my stepsister, the girl who entered my life when I was only 15, was not just a jealous sibling trying to steal attention or fight for space in the house. She was something darker, something twisted, and she carried with her a secret so terrifying that, by the time I uncovered it, my family was already destroyed. I'm sharing this because people think horror lives only in movies or haunted houses, but sometimes it lives right next to you, sleeping in the bedroom across the hall, smiling sweetly at your parents and plotting silently in the shadows against you. This is my story, and I hope you listen till the end because every detail matters and every moment I ignored was a step closer to hell. Please make sure to subscribe, like, and share this story so more people can hear what really happened to me. And remember, this story is written and edited by Dark Lifeside Diaries. It all began when my father remarried. My mother had passed away from cancer when I was 13, and 2 years later, my father met a woman named Claire. She was elegant, soft-spoken, the kind of woman who knew how to win everyone over with her kindness, and to be honest, at the time, I was happy for Dad. He deserved someone to help him heal. But what I didn't expect was the daughter Claire brought into our house, my new stepsister, Emily. She was just a year older than me, 17, when I met her, with long dark hair, pale skin, and this unsettling quietness about her. At first, I thought she was just shy, maybe struggling with the new changes in her life the way I was, but from the very beginning, something about her felt off. It wasn't just the way she looked at me with eyes that seemed to linger too long, watching me as though she were studying me. It was the way she smiled at my father, the way she seemed to charm him so easily, while her conversations with me were clipped, almost forced, as though she were hiding something behind her silence. Our house, an old Victorian-style home my grandparents had left to us, already had an eerie feeling at night with its creaking floorboards and drafty hallways, but with Emily moving in, it became unbearable. The first week she was there, I would wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of footsteps outside my door. At first I thought it was Dad, maybe restless, maybe checking if we were asleep, but when I peeked through the crack of my door, I saw her, Emily, standing perfectly still in the hallway, her head tilted slightly to one side, just staring at my door. She didn't move, she didn't knock, she didn't even breathe heavily. She just stood there in the shadows until finally she turned and walked silently back to her room. I told myself it was nothing, that maybe she had gotten lost in the dark house, or maybe she sleepwalked, but deep down I knew it wasn't. That things only got stranger. I started noticing little things missing from my room: my hairbrush, a pair of earrings, even my diary once. A few days later, I'd find them back in my drawer, but not the way I left them, as though someone had gone through them carefully. Then came the whispers at night. I would hear my name being called faintly from the hallway, a soft Rachel, Rachel, dragging out in this unsettling way. I would rush to open the door, thinking it was my Dad or even Clara, but the hallway would be empty. Once I caught Emily standing outside again, but this time when I asked her what she was doing, she just smiled and said, "You heard it too, didn't you?" That's when I realized she wasn't just trying to scare me. She wanted me to think something else was in the house, or maybe worse, she wanted me to believe she wasn't the one doing it. Dad never saw anything to him. Emily was perfect, polite, respectful, helpful around the house. He'd beam with pride every time she cooked dinner or helped Claire with chores, while I sat there feeling more and more invisible. And that was exactly how Emily wanted it. She began weaving herself deeper into their hearts, and I could feel her turning them against me. She would whisper to Claire when I entered the room, fall silent, and smile innocently, making me look paranoid. She told Dad I was rude, unwelcoming, still angry about the remarriage, and the worst part? He believed her every day. I felt more isolated in my own home, and every night the horrors grew worse. One night, I woke up to find Emily sitting on the edge of my bed. My heart nearly stopped. She wasn't asleep, she wasn't confused, her eyes were wide open, staring straight at me, and she whispered, "You don't belong here," I screamed, and Dad came running, but by the time he entered, Emily had slipped into the hallway, feigning sleep, pretending she had no idea what I was talking about. Dad scolded me for making up stories and told me to stop being so dramatic. That was the moment I knew I was completely alone in this fight. The following weeks were a blur of terror. My grades dropped because I couldn't sleep. My friends noticed how withdrawn I became, and my nights were filled with scratching noises at my door, whispers through the vents, and shadows moving in my room that shouldn't have been there. Once I swear I woke up to Emily standing over me holding a pair of scissors, her eyes glazed, as if she were in some kind of trance, but when I blinked she was gone. I thought I was losing my mind until I found something that proved otherwise. Hidden beneath her bed, tucked inside a box, were photographs of me, some taken while I was asleep. Some while I was just sitting in my room, and others that I couldn't even remember being taken alongside. The photos were strands of my hair, pieces of my jewelry, and what looked like scribbled notes about me, my schedule, my favorite foods even. The times I usually showered, it wasn't just obsession. It was ritualistic. That was when I realized Emily wasn't just a creepy stepsister. She was planning something bigger than just scaring me. I wanted to show Dad, but I knew he would never believe me, not with how perfectly she played the role of the sweet, innocent daughter, so I kept the box hidden, planning to find more proof. But what I didn't know was that Emily already knew I had discovered it. From that night on, things escalated. The house didn't just feel haunted anymore, it felt cursed. I began waking up with bruises on my arms, scratches on my legs, and once I even found the word leave carved faintly into the wood of my bedroom door. But when I confronted Emily, she would only laugh and say, "Maybe the house doesn't want you here either." The final straw of that first chapter of horror came the night I heard my mother's voice calling me. She had been gone for years, but when I woke up to the soft, familiar tone saying, "Rachel, come downstairs," my body went cold against my better judgment. I followed the voice, trembling as I crept down the creaky stairs in the dark. In the living room, the fireplace was lit, and standing in front of it was Emily, her face half lit by the flames, holding one of Mom's old dresses that I had kept in my closet. She was whispering something to it, almost chanting, and when she turned to me, her eyes were not the eyes of my stepsister anymore. They were black, bottomless, like pits of night. I screamed, and she dropped the dress, rushing toward me so fast I barely had time to run back upstairs. By the time I locked my door, I knew one thing: Emily wasn't just cruel, she wasn't just manipulative. She was dangerous, and whatever she was hiding, it was darker than anything I had ever imagined, and that was just the beginning. The days after that night blurred together in a haze of dread, fear, and paranoia that made me feel like I was sinking into some bottomless pit, and yet, no matter how much I tried to shake it off or convince myself, I was imagining things. There was no denying the truth anymore. Emily was dangerous, and she had something far darker inside her than I had ever understood. It wasn't just jealousy or malice, it was obsession mixed with some twisted force that I couldn't name, something supernatural. Something wrong. After I saw her eyes turn pitch black by the fireplace, I barely slept at all, and when I did, my dreams were plagued by shadows that whispered my name and faceless figures that crawled toward me until I woke up gasping for air, clutching my chest, only to realize that Emily was sitting in her room across the hall with her door wide open, watching me from the darkness like a predator waiting for its prey. I tried to tell Dad again, tried to explain that Emily wasn't who she pretended to be, that there was something wrong with her, but he only grew more frustrated, telling me I needed therapy, telling me grief was twisting my mind, and Claire looked at me with pity in her eyes like I was the problem, like I was trying to sabotage their new happy family, and all of that made me feel even more trapped, like the walls of the house were closing in on me. Emily knew this too. She fed off my isolation, off the way no one believed me, and her behavior grew bolder. She would hum in the hallway late at night, the same melody over and over, a tune I later recognized as the lullaby my mother used to sing to me when I was little, and I could never figure out how she knew it until I realized she'd been stealing more than just my belongings. She'd been stealing my memories, my safety, and my connection to my mother, and she was twisting them into weapons to torment me. One evening, I came home from school to find my room turned upside down, my clothes scattered, drawers pulled open, and on my bed lay my mother's framed photograph, shattered into pieces, the glass cracked straight across her face, and sitting neatly beside it was a note in handwriting that wasn't mine. "She left you, once she leave you." Again, my hand shook so hard I could barely hold the frame, and when I turned around, Emily was standing in the doorway, smiling faintly, and she whispered, "Don't worry, Rachel, I'll never leave you." Those words haunted me for days because they didn't sound like comfort, they sounded like a threat, like she was binding herself to me in some way I couldn't escape. I began to notice changes in the house itself, two things that made me question whether Emily was just disturbed or whether she had tapped into something truly unholy. Lights flickered constantly even when the bulbs were new. Cold drafts swept through rooms even though the windows were closed. And I heard knocks inside the walls, not on them but within them, like something was trapped and trying to get out. Claire would blame the house being old. Dad would blame faulty wiring, but I knew it wasn't that. I knew it was her, that somehow Emily was connected to it, drawing power from the house itself, bending it to her. Well, I tried to stay away from her, tried to spend more time at my friend Hannah's place, but every time I left for too long, something bad happened. Once Hannah's dog went missing after I confided in her about Emily, and when I got home that evening, I found tufts of fur under Emily's bed, matted and stained, and though I couldn't prove it, I knew she had done something unspeakable another time. I refused to eat dinner because she had cooked it, and I was too paranoid to trust her. Food, and the next morning I woke up vomiting, uncontrollably weak and dizzy, like I had been poisoned. Claire rushed me to the doctor, but Emily stood in the doorway of my room that morning, her lips curled into the smallest of grins, and I knew it wasn't coincidence. I knew she was slowly breaking me down piece by piece. The breaking point came the night I finally decided to follow her. For weeks I'd been hearing her footsteps in the middle of the night, pacing, then stopping, then pacing again, and once I even heard the creak of the back door opening. So one night, after pretending to be asleep, I waited until she moved, then slipped out quietly to follow her. She walked barefoot through the house, her nightgown dragging slightly on the floor, her hair messy, her head tilted as if she was listening to something I couldn't hear. She didn't notice me trailing her as she headed out to the old shed at the edge of the yard, the one Dad never used because it was falling apart. I held my breath as I peeked through a crack in the wooden boards, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Inside, lit only by candlelight, Emily had created some kind of altar. There were photographs of me pinned to the walls, strands of my hair tied together with black ribbon, and my mother's old necklace hanging above a circle she had drawn on the dirt floor, smeared with something dark, something that looked like blood. She was chanting words I didn't understand, her voice low and guttural. Not her voice anymore, and when she turned her face toward the candlelight, her eyes were black again, that same soulless black I had seen before. She was calling something, summoning it, and I realized in horror that I wasn't just her stepsister. I was her sacrifice. I stumbled back, nearly falling into the grass, my breath coming in ragged gasps, and I ran back inside before she saw me, locking my door and pressing my back against it until my whole body ached. I didn't sleep at all that night. And the next day I tried to tell Dad what I had seen, but the moment I mentioned the shed, Emily burst into tears, throwing herself into Claire's arms, saying I was lying about her, that I was making up cruel stories because I hated her. Dad's face hardened, and for the first time he shouted at me, accusing me of trying to destroy the family he had worked so hard to rebuild. That was when I realized Emily had won them over completely. She had manipulated them so deeply that no matter what I said, I would always look like the villain. I stopped trying to convince them after that. Instead, I started planning, trying to figure out how to protect myself, how to survive, because I could feel something building like a storm waiting to break, and I knew it was only a matter of time before Emily made her final move. But the house didn't give me much time. Just a few nights later, I woke up to the smell of smoke choking and thick filling my room. I panicked, thinking the house was on fire, but when I rushed to open the door, I saw that the hallway was clear. The smoke wasn't coming from the house, it was coming from under my bed. Heart pounding, I dropped to my knees and lifted the blanket, and what I saw nearly made me faint. Underneath, where there should have been nothing but floorboards, was a small fire burning in a circle, flames dancing without consuming anything, and in the middle of it lay one of my shirts, scorched and blackened with my name carved into the wood. Beneath it, I screamed, stumbling back, and that's when Emily appeared in the doorway, her face calm, almost serene, and she whispered, "It's almost time." Then she turned and walked away as if nothing had happened, leaving me shaking and sobbing on the floor, clutching the blanket like it could protect me. From that night on, I stopped questioning whether Emily was human or not. I knew she was something else, something that had slipped into my family disguised as a daughter or sister, but at her core she was evil. She began leaving marks on me, literal marks. I would wake up with symbols scratched into my skin, symbols that burned like fire, and no matter how much I tried to wash them, they wouldn't fade for days. Once I woke up with a handprint burned onto my shoulder, too large to be hers, too sharp to be Dad's, and I realized then that she wasn't acting alone. She had brought something into the house, something that was touching me, watching me, waiting. Every corner of the house felt alive, every shadow moved, every whisper echoed louder, and I felt like prey being circled by predators I couldn't see. Climax of this part came one stormy night when the thunder rattled the windows and the rain slammed against the urine. This part came one stormy night when the thunder rattled the windows and rattled the windows, and the rain slammed against the roof like a warning. I was lying awake, my body tense, when I heard the footsteps again, slow and deliberate, moving down the hallway toward my room. This time I didn't hide, I didn't pretend to sleep. I sat up, gripping the edge of the bed, and when My door creaked open. I saw Emily standing there, her hair wet from the storm, her eyes glinting in the dim light, and in her hand she held a knife. My breath caught my whole body frozen, and she stepped inside, whispering, "Don't worry, Rachel. After tonight, you'll finally see her again." She meant my mother. She meant she was going to kill me. I scrambled back, knocking over a lamp, screaming at the top of my lungs, and just as she lunged, Dad burst into the room, grabbing her wrist before she could reach me. For a moment, I thought I was saved, but when I looked into Emily's face, she didn't look scared, she didn't look angry, she looked triumphant, like this was all part of her plan. And that was when I realized the nightmare had only just begun. Dad holding Emily's wrist should have been the moment. Everything stopped the moment the truth was revealed, the moment he finally saw what I had been living through for months, but instead it twisted into something much worse because Emily knew how to perform, how to manipulate, how to transform herself from predator to victim in an instant. She let the knife slip from her hand, falling to the carpet with a dull thud, and she burst into tears, crying out, "Daddy, she's lying again. She's trying to hurt me." Her voice trembled with practiced innocence, her eyes wide and terrified, and in that moment Dad turned on me, his face furious, his voice booming as he demanded why I was accusing her, why I was making up stories about my sweet sister, and the disbelief that ripped through me was worse than the terror. I pointed at the knife, screamed that she had tried to kill me, but when Dad looked down, the blade was gone, vanished, as if it had never existed. Emily's eyes flickered toward me, then a small smirk playing at her lips before she buried her face in Claire's arms, sobbing about how much I hated her, how cruel I had become. My own father told me to stop, told me I was sick, that I needed serious help, and he stormed out of the room with Claire holding Emily close, leaving me shaking, broken, and more alone than ever before that night. I cried myself to sleep, not because I was scared of Emily, though I was, but because I realized I had lost Dad completely, and in his blindness he had handed me over to her like a lamb to slaughter. The days after that felt like a slow countdown to my death. Emily didn't bother hiding anymore. She would walk past me in the hall and whisper things only I could hear. "I'll make it quick, or you'll beg me to stop." Sometimes she would leave little gifts in my room, like a dead bird wrapped in cloth or a drawing of me with my eyes scratched out. And when I tried to throw them away, they would reappear sitting on my pillow as if the house itself was delivering them back to me. The altar in the shed grew larger too. I saw it one afternoon when I dared to peek again. There were more photos, more hair, more blood, and something new. A doll that looked exactly like me, its chest pinned with needles, its mouth sewn shut with black thread. My stomach turned as I realized she wasn't just trying to kill me. Physically, she was binding me, controlling me, cursing me in ways I didn't understand. The nightmares grew unbearable, filled with images of fire and shadows dragging me into the ground. And every morning I woke up weaker, paler, like my very life was being drained. Even my reflection changed. Some days when I looked into the mirror, my face flickered, replaced by Emily's smiling face staring back at me, and I would smash the glass in panic, only for her to laugh from the hallway and say, "You'll never escape me." Hannah was the only person I confided and the only one who believed me, and one night she came over, secretly sneaking in through my window because Dad wouldn't let her visit anymore, saying she was encouraging my delusions. I showed her the bruises, the scratches, the symbols that appeared on my skin, and instead of doubting, she held me and said, "Rachel, this isn't just her, it's something bigger. She's using something, we need to stop her." Hannah was the one who suggested looking into old records about the house, and together we went to the town library the next day. What we found chilled me to my core. Decades ago, long before my grandparents owned the house, it had belonged to a family that mysteriously vanished, leaving behind only bloodstains in the shed and rumors of occult practices. Locals whispered that the eldest daughter of that family had dabbled in dark rituals, summoning things she couldn't control, and the entire family had been swallowed by whatever she brought forth. The shed had been the center of it all. I stared at those yellowed newspaper clippings, my heart pounding, and I realized Emily hadn't just stumbled onto this, she had chosen it. She'd been feeding off the house's darkness, continuing the work of the girl who came before, and now she had chosen me as her sacrifice. That night when I returned home, Emily was waiting in my room. She was sitting on my bed, turning my mother's necklace over in her hands, her expression calm, almost tender, and she said softly, "You don't need to fight it anymore. She's waiting for you." I froze, my throat dry, because I knew she was talking about Mom, and the way she said it, the way her voice shifted deeper, almost layered with something inhuman, made my skin crawl. I demanded she leave my room, screamed at her, but she only placed the necklace on my pillow and walked out without another word. When I tried to pick it up, it burned my hand, searing my skin with a mark that looked like the same circle I had seen in the shed. I dropped it instantly, crying in pain, and when I looked up, she was standing in the hallway, smiling, whispering almost. The storm came 2 nights later, fierce winds shaking the house, thunder splitting the sky, and I knew something was about to happen. Emily vanished after dinner. When I asked Dad where she was, he snapped at me, saying she was more responsible than me, that I should stop worrying, but I couldn't ignore the pull in my chest, the way the air itself felt heavy, pressing down on me. Around midnight, I heard chanting outside, faint but unmistakable, and I knew she was in the shed again. My body trembled as I grabbed a flashlight and slipped out, the rain drenching me instantly, the mud sucking at my shoes. When I reached the shed, the chanting was louder, rising and falling in unnatural tones, and I pushed the door open just enough to see inside. Emily stood in the center of the circle, her arms raised, her eyes completely black, her mouth moving with words I couldn't understand, and around her were shaped shadows darker than the dark, writhing, growing as though answering her call. In the circle, the doll that looked like me was burning slowly, its threads snapping, its face melting, and with each second, I felt my chest tighten like I couldn't breathe, like my life was being ripped out of me. I gasped and stumbled, and her head snapped toward me, her smile stretching wide as she said, "You came just in time." I tried to run, but the shed door slammed shut on its own, the wood shuddering, and the candles flared so high they nearly touched the ceiling. The shadows surged toward me, wrapping around my arms, my legs holding me in place as Emily stepped closer, her face inches from mine, and she whispered, "Don't fight it, Rachel, you'll be with her again, and I'll finally be whole." She raised a knife, black and jagged, unlike anything I had ever seen, and I screamed, struggling against the shadows, begging her to stop. Just then the door burst open, and Hannah stood there, soaked from the rain, holding a cross she had taken from her church. She shouted something I couldn't hear over the roar of the storm, but the moment she raised the cross, the shadows recoiled, screeching, and Emily screamed too, her body twisting unnaturally as she staggered back. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes, real fear, and I realized she wasn't as invincible as she wanted me to believe. Hannah grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the door, but Emily lunged, slashing the knife across my shoulder, the pain searing hot, and I cried out as blood poured down my arm. Somehow we managed to break free, sprinting through the mud back toward the house, but when I looked back, Emily was standing in the shed doorway, her silhouette glowing from the fire inside, and she screamed into the storm, "You can't run from me, Rachel, you're mine." The wind carried her voice echoing through the night, and I knew she wasn't lying. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Back inside, Dad and Claire were waiting, their faces pale with shock as they saw my bloody shoulder, but when I tried to explain what had happened, Emily walked in behind us, calm, clean, her nightgown dry as if she'd never stepped outside, and she said softly, "She hurt herself again." Dad looked torn, unsure who to believe, but Claire immediately sided with her, saying I needed to be admitted somewhere, that I was dangerous. Hannah argued, shouting that Emily was a liar, that she had seen everything, but even then Emily smiled, her eyes flickering black for just a moment, too quick for anyone else to notice, and I knew she was tightening her grip. That night, as I lay in my room with my shoulder bandaged, Hannah asleep beside me to protect me, I whispered to myself over and over, "I won't let her win, I won't let her take me." But deep down I wasn't sure. Deep down I felt the shadows already creeping closer, and that's when I realized if I didn't end this soon, Emily wouldn't just destroy me, she would destroy everyone. The days following that stormy night became a blur of fear, tension, and the growing realization that my life was spiraling toward an inevitable end because Emily no longer tried to hide what she was, at least not from me. To Dad and Claire, she remained the sweet, perfect daughter who smiled innocently and played the role of the angel they wanted to believe in. But to me, in the silence of our rooms and the darkness of the hallways, she showed her true face, whispering promises of my death, of reunions with my mother, of shadows that would feast on my soul once she was done with me. I could feel the house itself decaying around us, the walls groaning like they were alive, the floorboards warping as though something underneath was crawling upward, and every night I saw shapes flickering across my ceiling, hands reaching from the corners, whispering voices murmuring my name. Hannah refused to leave my side, sleeping over whenever she could, and without her I don't think I would have survived those nights. But Emily knew Hannah was a threat, and soon her torment wasn't only aimed at me. Hannah began waking up with scratches on her arms, nightmares so vivid she would scream in her sleep, and once she woke to find her car covered In dead birds, their necks twisted unnaturally, Hannah wanted to go to the police to show them the shed, the photos, the altar, but when we tried, the shed was suddenly empty, stripped bare as if it had never been touched. The dirt floor smoothed the candles. Gone, the photos missing. Emily had erased it all, covering their tracks with meticulous care, and when the police looked at me with doubt in their eyes, when they asked if maybe grief was making me imagine things, I broke down sobbing because I knew. I had no proof, no way to fight her in the eyes of the world. The breaking point came one evening when Dad announced that he had scheduled an appointment with a psychiatric facility for me. He said it gently, like he was helping, like he was saving me, but I knew what it meant. It meant he believed Emily fully, that he thought I was the dangerous one, that I was crazy, and once I was gone, once I was locked away, Emily would have me right where she wanted me. That night, as I sat in my room trembling, Hannah pacing with fury, I made the decision that I had been too afraid to make before. I wasn't going to wait for Emily to destroy me. I was going to fight back. Hannah and I researched protection rituals, anything we could find that could sever Emily's connection to whatever darkness she had summoned, and though most of it felt like superstition, I was desperate enough to try. We gathered salt candles and a Bible Hannah's grandmother had given her, and we waited. I knew Emily would strike soon, that she could feel time running out, and sure enough, just after midnight, the storm returned. The house plunged into darkness as the power went out, the air thick and heavy, like the breath of something monstrous, and I heard her humming in the hallway that same lullaby my mother used to sing, only twisted, broken, haunting. The door to my room creaked open slowly, and Emily stood there, not even pretending anymore. Her eyes were fully black, her smile stretching too wide, her skin pale as though drained of life, and behind her shadows slithered along the walls, dripping into the room like ink. She stepped inside, her voice layered and deep, not entirely her own, as she whispered, "It's time, Rachel, tonight you'll be mine forever." My heart hammered, but I forced myself to stand, holding the Bible in my trembling hands while Hannah scattered salt across the threshold. Emily hissed at the sight of it, her face twisting with fury, and she lunged forward, but the salt stopped her burning her feet like fire. She screamed a sound that wasn't human, echoing like dozens of voices at once, and the shadows writhed violently, crashing against the walls. Hannah shouted prayers, her voice shaking but strong, while I held up the Bible and screamed for my mother to protect me, for the house to release me, for whatever good still lingered to fight against the darkness. Emily staggered, her face contorting, veins bulging black under her skin, and she shrieked, "She's gone. She left you. You're mine now." But I felt something stir in the air, something warm, something that pushed back against the icy grip of the shadows. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone. The battle raged on for what felt like hours, the candles flickering violently, the salt circle glowing faintly as Emily clawed and screamed, trying to reach me. She raised her blackened knife, striking at the barrier, but sparks flew each time she touched it, and her fury grew until she wasn't even human anymore. Her limbs twisted, her voice guttural, her body convulsing as if the thing inside her was tearing its way out. I fell to my knees, exhausted, bleeding from my shoulder, my voice hoarse from screaming, and just when I thought I couldn't hold on anymore, Hannah grabbed my hand and shouted, "Rachel, tell her no. Tell her she doesn't own you." The words surged through me like fire, like truth, and I stood shaking and screamed at Emily with everything I had, "You'll never have me. You'll never take me. I am not yours." The shadows recoiled, the knife shattered into pieces, and Emily screamed one final time, her body arching back as black smoke poured out of her mouth, filling the room before vanishing into the night. She collapsed to the floor, lifeless, her eyes rolling white, and for a moment there was silence. Dad and Claire rushed in seconds later, their faces pale with terror as they saw Emily's body. Claire screamed, dropping to her knees, while Dad looked at me with something between horror and realization. He finally saw the marks on my skin, the shattered knife, the salt circle, the remnants of shadows still clinging to the walls, and his face crumpled with guilt. "Rachel," he whispered, but I couldn't even answer. I was too tired, too broken, too hollow. They called an ambulance, but Emily never woke up. She was gone, her body empty, whatever had lived inside her finally torn free. Some said it was a seizure, some said it was a breakdown, but I knew the truth. Emily had been possessed by something ancient, something that had used her jealousy and cruelty to worm its way into our family, and though we fought it off, though I survived, a piece of it would always remain in that house, in those walls, in my memories. It's been months since that night, and though the house is quiet now, though the shadows no longer whisper, I still wake in the middle of the night, expecting to see her standing at my door. Sometimes I hear that lullaby faintly in my dreams. Sometimes I feel her eyes on me when I pass a mirror and I know she's not entirely gone. Maybe she never will be. Maybe she's waiting for me in the dark, biding her time. But one thing I know for certain, I'll never forgive her, and I'll never forget, because Emily wasn't just my stepsister, she was my nightmare, my curse, and my reminder that evil doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it's brought into your life disguised as family. Thanks for listening to my story. If you made it this far, I truly appreciate it. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. And remember, your support keeps me going and your attention means the world. Stay safe, stay aware, and never ignore the darkness that might be closer than you think.